I am going to have to pace myself today. Joe Rogan again, Pete Davidson again, the Jimmy Carr thing I didn't get to, comedy being pulled off another service, I think. Whew. Hi, I'm Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. You're watching the Olympics. Jimmy Fallon said, "Thank you, curling, for being the only sport in the world where world-class athletes can train by Swiffering their kitchen." Good joke. Remember yesterday I told you that Leslie Jones put out some vague tweet where she wasn't going to tweet about the Olympics anymore? Well, good news. NBC put out a statement. NBC spokesperson Greg Hughes, not to be confused with shock jock Greg Opie Hughes from Opie and Anthony, said, "We have resolved the situation. Leslie Jones is free to do her social media posts as she's done in the past. She's a super fan of the Olympics, and we are super fans of hers. According to not Opie Hughes, it was a third-party error that caused Jones' videos to be blocked, not NBC. After Leslie wrote on social media she would not stay anywhere she's not welcomed, she had stopped posting clips of the Olympics, but she's back." We'll get to the Rogan stuff, but let's stop off at Gossip Corner real quick. Pete Davidson made a reference to his quote-unquote girlfriend. Yeah, CNN picking up on this. In an interview in which we learned that Pete Davidson has a Kim Kardashian candle, say that 3 times fast, Pete also used the word girlfriend. Pete was asked about being famous, and he said, "I don't have Instagram or Twitter or any of that stuff, so most of my daily life is getting into cars and showing up to a set. Or if I'm off, I either just hang out with my friends or chill with my girlfriend inside, so I don't do much." Now, he didn't specifically mention that Kim Kardashian is the girlfriend, but he's been seen with her a lot, and he has a candle of her. Pete added, "This would be the first year that I'm thinking about Valentine's Day plans. It's a big day. It's another Super Bowl, a Super Bowl for the ladies. I'm all for it. I like the content." Meanwhile, over the weekend, didn't get to tell you about this yesterday, Pete Davidson returned to Syracuse and he was booed at the men's basketball game. Why? 3 years ago, Pete was on Howard Stern's radio show and called Syracuse the city trash. A season ticket holder who attended the game told Page 6, Pete Davidson seemed to be prepared for what was coming to him. He brushed it off and had a laugh, as did the locals. Pete was trying to blend in with the crowd. He was wearing a gray hoodie, sunglasses, and a Syracuse hat. The insider said Pete remained bundled throughout the game, maybe because of the single-digit temps, or perhaps because of the cold welcome from natives. Another witness said during halftime, campus police escorted Pete Davidson up to Adam Weitzman's suite. Adam Weitzman is some sort of entrepreneur and Syracuse superfan, whatever. Everyone was trying to follow them in, but they kept walking. Pete and Weitzman left shortly after halftime and dined at Funk and Waffles. Syracuse basketball reporter Mike Curtis shared a video on Twitter that Pete Davidson filmed for this purpose for the city of Syracuse. On the video, Pete Davidson said, "Thank you so much for having me and my friends in the building. We had a really great time, so peace." As I was prepping for the show, I found a whole bunch of weird beefs on Twitter. How about Larry the Cable Guy versus Paul F. Tompkins? Although, to be fair, it's kind of Paul F. Tompkins versus Larry the Cable Guy. I don't think Larry knows anything about this. Larry the Cable Guy had tweeted, "This country has so many weak-minded folks. People in third world countries don't get offended at words and podcasts because they're trying to find food, avoiding encephalitis, and fleeing from genocidal dictatorships. So ponder that the next time you're literally shaking." Paul F. Tompkins responded, "Lawrence, did you know that people in America are also trying to find food and avoid being sick while we demonize refugees who flee to our country? So people being offended by ignorance is actually a step in the right direction." Okay, then. Andy Kindler tweeted, "Don't hire me for a cameo and then give me a 3-star Yelp review. This isn't a restaurant. You can't send the cameo back, and nobody cares why you think the comedy wasn't prepared correctly." All right, weird move, Andy Kindler, but whatever. Bert Kreischer keeping the peace. I just want to put this out there, this on Twitter. I love playing disc golf. We play almost every day we're on the road. If you see that I'm coming to your city and you know a great disc golf course, please hit me up. I appreciate it. Twitter user @LennyBrown81 hit Bert Kreischer back and said, "Download a disc golf app called UDisc. It has almost every single disc golf course in America registered on it. It has a similar feel to Apple Maps, but with course locations. All courses have ratings, comments, and pictures." Am I slacking here? There's a relatively new disc golf course right by my house, and I'm pretty good with a Frisbee. Should I be out there playing? It's always packed, like always packed. Even when it's freezing out, it is packed. Very popular sport. I didn't get to this one yesterday, and probably don't even have time today, to be honest. From People magazine, after Rudy Giuliani was revealed as a contestant on The Masked Singer, and Ken Jeong and Robin Thicke walked off, a source says Ken was super upset and indeed stormed out. Robin actually followed him because he and Ken are very close friends, and he wanted to check on him. Robin didn't storm out because of Giuliani. Ken felt disrespected and was livid to see Rudy was under the mask, is why he walked off. There's no way he could hide his feelings. Ken has been incredibly vocal about how the previous administration handled many things, but especially COVID-19, and has found a lot of what they've said not only wrong but dangerous. To get someone who helped to spread misinformation and call into question the accuracy of our election and democracy to appear on his show was gonna set him off. Fox magazine caught my attention. Their headline, Comedy's Existential Crisis, the Joe Rogan debate underscores comedy's ongoing conversation about morality, cancel culture, and how to be funny. I read it. I'm going to pick at it here, but I'm not really sure what the point was. Or the thematic theme of the article. There are a couple interesting paragraphs, which I'll share, but I got to the end and I'm like, so what did you want me to think of this? They wrote about Moses Storm's HBO comedy special, Trash White. On the special, Moses said, if I were doing a modern comedy special, the ones where it's more like a TED Talk, that is a veiled shot at Hannah Gadsby. But I think this next sentence is interesting from Moses Storm's comedy special. Your friend asks you, hey, how about that comedy special? Was it funny? And you're like, it was important. Yeah, I think he makes a good point there that some of the quote-unquote comedy specials have lost the narrative here. Vox writes, since Hannah Gadsby's intentionally sober 2018 special Nanette elevated the idea of the non-comedic comedy special, many comedians seem to be scrambling to figure out where they fall on the scale between just jokes and glorified lecture. Rose Matafeo in her 2020 HBO special Horn Dog said her special isn't one of those effing comedy shows where it's like, there's a lesson to be learned at the end of it. I kind of hate that crap. Alrighty, from The Independent, more Joe Rogan stuff. Joe Rogan has been seen laughing as a co-host, described how he sexually exploited young women at a comedy club at a resurface video. This from Joey Diaz. Rogan was interviewing Joey Diaz in 2011. Now let me jump in here. Of all the comedians I have met in my travels, the one that I hate the most, the one who is the biggest a-hole, the one who is the biggest jerk that I ever met in my life was Joey Diaz. Joe Rogan was interviewing Joey Diaz in 2011 when the allegations of sexual coercion were made by Joey Diaz. The Independent says Rogan laughed as Diaz revealed how he encouraged female comedians to, I'm cleaning it up here, perform fellatio on him because it was a gateway into Hollywood. Rogan apparently says, how many girls did you have do that? Diaz says 20 of them. You can read for yourself the exchange on The Independent. One Twitter user said, I remember the first time I heard about this, it came out when the Me Too movement first started to rev up. I wondered why it wasn't getting much attention. I assumed it's because Joey Diaz isn't that famous. I think he's pretty famous in the comedy world, though, so we'll keep an eye on that one. Trevor Noah came at Joe Rogan. This recapped on the week. On Monday's Daily Show, Trevor posted, quote, a supercut of Joe Rogan dropping the N-word like he bought it in bulk at Costco. If there's ever a video of you saying the N-word that many times, you better pray one of two things. Either you're a black person or you're a dead man from history. But what bothered Trevor even more, according to this recap, I haven't actually seen that episode of The Daily Show, was when Rogan described watching a movie in a black neighborhood. Trevor said, that video's so bad it actually made me miss the N-word video. Rogan's defense that he was trying to be entertaining, not racist, Trevor doesn't accept it and said, no, Joe, I think you were using racism to be entertaining and you knew that offending black people would get a laugh out of those white friends you were with. Trevor added, as a comedian, he's a fan of all types of jokes and, quote, a joke can be racist. In fact, a joke can be racist and funny if you're telling it to the right crowd, but don't pretend it isn't racist. Noah added, if there's something you shouldn't have said in public, basically, Rogan has said it on his podcast. That's a $100 million problem for Spotify. Part of me actually wishes that Spotify would just drop the facade, just come out and be like, we do not believe in silencing Joe Rogan because he makes us money. But if at some point he ends up costing us money, then we will drop him because money. Bingo, Trevor Noah. Bingo, bingo, bingo. Trevor continued. And as for Joe Rogan, he said he's learned his lesson. I hope he has. But I will say, if I were him, I wouldn't walk into a cinema in a black neighborhood for a little while. Tim Dillon on his podcast talked about the Joe Rogan controversy. He more came at it from the standpoint of Joe's getting a lot of press out of this. How do I get press for it? A very funny listen. But as I always couch, one day Tim Dillon's going to step on the landmine and I'm going to step away from Tim Dillon faster than The Rock disavowed Joe Rogan. I'm going to be like, Tim Dillon? Never heard of him. But until then, this episode's pretty funny. Next topic, Jimmy Carr. Anti-hate groups, including the Holocaust Memorial Day Trust, the Auschwitz Memorial, and Hope Not Hate, have condemned Jimmy Carr's comments in his recent Netflix special. So if you saw the special, and I'm reading here from Chortle, Jimmy Carr plays up the offensive nature of his jokes in the special His Dark Materials and introduces the contentious line by saying, "This should be a career ender, okay? Strap in, everybody. You ready?" So he's going into this joke saying this should be a career ender. I'll read the transcript. When people talk about the Holocaust, they talk about the tragedy and horror of 6 million Jewish lives being lost to the Nazi war machine, but they never mention the thousands of gypsies that were killed by the Nazis. No one ever wants to talk about that because no one ever wants to talk about the positives. Carr defended the gag on stage, saying it was effing funny, edgy as all hell, and had an educational quality. He says everyone in the room knows 6 million Jewish people lost their lives to the Nazis during World War II, but a lot of people don't know because it's not really taught in our schools that the Nazis also killed in their thousands gypsies, homosexuals, disabled people, and Jehovah's Witnesses. People say never forget. Well, this is how I remember. I keep bringing it up. Now, I deliberately read that flat. If you watch the clip, Jimmy changes speeds, mugs for the camera. So me reading it has one intonation. You reading the transcript will have one intonation. Jimmy performing it has one intonation. The Traveler Movement is a national charity that challenges discrimination. They tweeted, "This is truly disturbing and goes way beyond humor. We need all your support in calling this out." On their petition, they said, "Material like this normalizes further discrimination and even violence against already marginalized communities. We acknowledge that Jimmy Carr highlighted the widespread ignorance that exists with regard to non-Jewish victims of the Holocaust, but it was nevertheless incredibly crass for him to claim his joke therefore had an educational quality. If this was the case, he would have used his considerable platform to raise awareness of Roma Holocaust Memorial Day to his 6.7 million followers. To our knowledge, this has never happened. This speaks volumes." Historians estimate that between 220,000 and 500,000 Romani and Sinti were killed by the Nazi regime, between a quarter and a half of the population in Europe at that time. This is not the first time Jimmy Carr made jokes that targeted travelers. In 2006, the BBC had to issue an apology over a joke Carr made about gypsy women. That joke, the male gypsy moth can smell the female gypsy moth up to 7 miles away, and that fact also works if you remove the word moth. The BBC writes, but is there a difference when the words are taken as part of an hour-long set in which Carr specifically makes clear from the outset that he's going to be offensive and then frames the joke within the context of career enders? Yeah, if you watch the end of his last special, he is asking the audience, should we ramp it up? Should we ramp it up? Jessica Toomey runs the Frog and Bucket Comedy Club in Manchester. She told the BBC, "I don't like the joke, but it's a joke. He's purposely trying to push the boundaries." She added, "Jimmy Carr hasn't done a gig in her club in 2 decades, but if he rang me up tomorrow and said, 'Can I jump on your stage?' I'd say yes, but I'd make clear to the audience they were coming to see Jimmy Carr. I would just spring his offensive style on an unsuspecting audience. The argument is, if you don't like it, don't watch it. I don't defend the joke, but I defend his right to say it." Boy, I'll tell you, when I started this thing, I thought this podcast was going to be like, Hannibal Buress is playing the Laugh Factory. And wow, we get into such serious topics some days on the podcast. A fan of the show who we connect sometimes on Instagram Messenger or whatever that's called told me Miss Pat's new special on Netflix is hilarious. I will check that out as soon as I get it. But it was a strong recommendation, so you might want to check out Miss Pat. It is Wednesday, so it is trivia night. Glenn and I will be heading to the brewery to try and win trivia tonight. So if you want to support the show, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/dailycomedynews. Throw whatever amount you want in the tip jar. I usually say $5, but a beer is $7. So maybe you throw $7 in the tip jar. But if you throw in 5, I will buy Glenn 5/7 of a beer. I did that last week. I shared the picture on Instagram at Daily Comedy News of Glenn with 5/7 of a beer. So I don't just pocket your cash. I do what I say with it. So if you want to support the show, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/dailycomedynews. You can also buy one of those new snazzy National Donuts chain t-shirts that I'm hawking. I want to thank Elise, who reminded me of technology. She was on the Facebook group, which is Daily Comedy News Facebook group, and was like, she didn't phrase it this way, but was like, "Hey, dummy, tiny URL." She phrased it much more nicely, but the message was like, "Hey, tiny URL, get with it. We've had that for 30 years. So I'm like, oh yeah. All right. So if you want a National Donuts chain t-shirt, say you're hanging out at the brewery and you want to show that you're in on the jokes, You go to tinyurl.com/donuts-chain, tinyurl.com/donuts.chain. There, you can buy a National Donuts Chain t-shirt. It's $20 plus shipping. I get $5 of that. Great way to support the show. The Oscar nominations came out. Best Picture, interestingly enough, Don't Look Up, which I thought was fantastic, gets a nomination for Best Picture. It will be up against Belfast, Coda, Drive My Car, Dune, King Richard, Licorice Pizza, Nightmare Alley, The Power of the Dog, and West Side Story. How many movies are in this category? Whew. Let's see. We are long today. I got a Colin Quinn thing that can wait, a Kevin Hart thing that can wait, because we got to get into this. From Variety, on Monday, a law firm filed copyright infringement lawsuits against Pandora on behalf of 5 comedians or their estates. The 5 comedians, Robin Williams, George Carlin, Andrew Dice Clay, Bill Engvall, and Ron White, each are represented by digital rights management and collection agency Word Collections. The lawsuits allege, for years, Pandora has illegally made reproductions of digital broadcasts on its servers and provided streaming access to its users without a proper public performance license and, when applicable, a reproduction right license. In total, the 5 lawsuits seek $41.5 million in damages. A line in the lawsuit: while George Carlin would have been thrilled for his works to live on through valid licenses and payments, he would have had 7 dirty words to say about Pandora's actions and willful copyright infringement, no doubt. All right, you wrote the sizzle line. I read the sizzle line. Seems a little cute for a lawsuit. Who knows? What I worry about is the streaming services going, why are we bothering with comedy and getting rid of it? You know, Spotify took off a bunch of things. This article mentions the works of Jim Gaffigan, John Mulaney, David Tell, Birbiglia, Chad Daniels, Tom Segura, Foxworthy, Tiffany Haddish, Kevin Hart, Dunham, Larry the Cable Guy, Patton Oswalt, Newhart, Paula Padstone, Robin Williams, Amy Schumer, and Lisa Lampanelli, all coming off Spotify. So if Pandora stops playing comedy and then the other ones stop playing comedy, what will happen is the middle tier comedians, the ones that like getting the 5-figure checks for royalties, they're not going to get them anymore. There's also the exposure angle of it. If you're a middle tier comedian and you're heard on one of these streaming services, it's kind of good. If comedy comes off, now nobody's going to make any money. And then you have a lack of awareness of middle tier comedians. Sure, if you get a Netflix special, if you're one of the 5 or 6 that Netflix puts on and they have cut back, they've stopped writing the huge checks, sure, you'll be fine. Jim Gaffigan will be fine. John Mulaney will be fine. Dave Chappelle will be fine. But what about those middle tier guys who won't have the exposure? I worry about them, so we'll keep an eye on that. And from Chortle, congratulations to Richard Pulsford. He's been crowned the UK Pun Champion of 2022 at the Leicester Comedy Festival. Host Jason Byrne oversaw a rap battle style knockout competition between the finalists, staged in a boxing ring. Ready for a bunch of puns from Pulsford? My old Looney Tunes app still has bugs in it. Ian McDonald. I was charged with repairing a train. Unfortunately, it seems I bit off more than I could chew. Rob Thomas. When I was a kid, we used to play football with dead rabbits, thumpers for goalposts. Chris Norton Walker. If you're going to walk 10,000 miles, wear the correct footwear and consult a doctor. The disclaimers. Think about it. Richard Wolford. My head hurt when I went to a city in Spain. I had a Sevilla headache. Frizzle was playing a chord on his keyboard and said, "That's home to me. That's A flat." Congratulations, Richard Pulsford, Pun Champion of 2022. That is your comedy news for today. All right, so much to plug here. We've got the Facebook group, which is Daily Comedy News, a Facebook group. There's the new subreddit, Daily Comedy News. You're going to buy a t-shirt, tinyurl.com/donuts-chain. And follow the show on Spotify, Apple, Google, wherever you get your shows. Tell a friend about the show. See you tomorrow.